Okay, good evening, everyone. Hello. Glad to see you all. We're getting a really great turnout this evening. I am Ron Janse. I am president of the School of Communication and Information Alumni Association. So I wanted to just kick off this event with a few introductory comments. The Alumni Association has been conducting these events since 1979. So we've been doing this for quite some time. Our process, by the way, is to alternate among the three departments in the school: the communication department, journalism and media studies, and library and information science. This year, our honoree is Dr. Nicole Cook, representing the LIS department. Nicole will be presenting this year regarding the challenges and rewards of her career and highlighting some personal experiences and some of her current research perspectives. We will begin shortly. Dr. Marie Radford will introduce Nicole. During Nicole's presentation, you can post questions on chat, and after her presentation, we will have a Q&A period, so you can ask questions at that time. My colleague, Marty Cedar, will work through the chat questions and present them to Nicole. So before I turn the introduction over to Marie, I would actually like to take and have a moment of silence for one of our school's faculty, Dr. Ross Todd, who passed away recently. So Ross was a well-known expert on adolescent information seeking, learning in digital information environments, and transforming the role of school libraries. He was a member of LIS faculty for over 21 years. Ross will be remembered for his inspiring presentations, his clever wit, his engaging stories, and especially by all his friends that he made. Okay. All his friends that he made throughout the world and across librarianship. We were all devastated by the loss of an esteemed colleague. And so now I'd like for everyone to just take a moment of silence in memory of Ross. Okay, thank you, everyone. I'll turn it over to Marie now.
Okay, thank you so much, Ron. And yeah, we are really just heartbroken over any of you students. I see a lot of students and former and current alumni and current students. If you ever had Ross as a professor, you know how immensely he touched all of us. And I will say that it's a special tribute with Nicole here. Ross was Nicole's dissertation advisor. And so it's a special tribute to Ross, her success and her amazing career that I'm going to introduce to you in a minute. But before we do that, I would like to recognize that we had former dean here, Gus Friedrich, and Betty Turok, who's our also former dean and a past president of ALA and one of the founders of the Spectrum Scholarship, which Nicole Cook was one of the original cohort of the Spectrum Scholars. And so it's a really special tribute in the work of Betty and Gus as well. I also want to recognize that we have with us tonight Daphne Lemish, Daphne is our Associate Dean for Teaching and Programs, I guess. Today it was announced at our SCI faculty meeting that Daphne is our new interim dean. So Jonathan Potter will be stepping down as of July 1 and stepping into the communication faculty, and Daphne will be stepping in as our interim dean. And I'm really thrilled, Daphne, to see you here tonight. And so we have a really full program. So without further, I'll just introduce to you Nicole. So I met Nicole when she was a Ph.D. student here. And as I said, I became really familiar with her work. Ross Todd, her advisor, invited me onto the committee, and I was really pleased to work with Nicole. Nicole got her PhD from SCI in 2012. Now, that's not her first degree at Rutgers. So Nicole also is an alumni of our Master of Library Service degree, which she got in 1999. But that's not her only other Rutgers degree. We were just talking about, as we were gathering tonight, that she also has a bachelor's degree in communication from then Skills, right, in 1997. So currently, Nicole is the Augusta Baker Endowed Chair and Associate Professor at the School of Library and Information Science at the University of South Carolina. She before coming to the University of South Carolina, she was a tenured associate professor at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And prior to that, she was a practicing librarian in New Jersey, including Montclair State University for 13 years. Dr. Cook is professionally active in ALA, ACRL, the Association of Library and Information Science Educators, and several other professional library organizations. Nicole has been winning awards, so many awards that I can barely keep up. So I might forget some, but her most recent one, I think, is that she was the 2021 University of South Carolina Social Justice Award winner. She has also won the 2017 ALA Achievement in Library Diversity Research Award, presented by the Office for Diversity and Literacy Outreach Services, and the 2016 ALA Equality Award. She has also been honored at the University of Illinois YWCA's 2015 Leadership Award in recognition of her work in social justice and higher education, and she was selected as the university's 2016 Lorene Y. Cohen Make a Difference Award for teaching and mentoring in diversity. She was also the 2013 recipient of the Norman Horrocks Leadership Award given by Elise, and for many of you may remember, I mean, I don't know, I'm dating myself, Norman Horrocks was an adjunct professor on our faculty, and a really amazing mentor who we all really, it's one of the people that I high up in high regard in the library profession as a mentor, and a really kind person who guided all of us in our beginning years in the profession. She was also named a Library Journal Mover and Shaker. So, you know, Nicole just has this amazing ability to inspire other people who hear her. Our students, she came last year, Nicole, thank you so much. She came to speak to our Scarlet group. So the Scarlet group is our students who are interested in academic librarianship. And I'm the advisor, and they came to me, they said, we want Nicole Cook. And I said, she is so busy. I said, I don't know. I said, go ahead, ask her. So the students reached out to Nicole, and Nicole said yes right away. And then Nicole said, I just want to have a conversation. And the students were so inspired. Many of them came to me afterwards and told me how much they were inspired by her words. And so she just has this really incredible knack for for inspiring others, and for being very, very, very wise and way beyond her needs, and also for being very accessible. So Nicole, I think I'm going to stop there. I could go on more, but this is your night. We're very, very excited to award you this, our highest honor for our SC&I Alumni Association. So congratulations, and we're really excited to hear what you have to say tonight.
All righty. Thank you so much, Marie, for that kind introduction. It is just really a great honor. I just only wish that, I could be there with you all in person. Let me just get this slideshow running for you. So yes, yeah, I am probably already getting emotional. It is always wonderful to come back home and be with Rutgers. As Marie mentioned, very proud 3-time alum. I always like to tell people I got all 3 of my degrees from the same building, so I love being able to talk about my time at Rutgers. So, as Ron said, I'm just going to give you a little information about what I've been doing. I said to Marie before we got started, I'm finishing up my 10th year as a faculty member, which I just can't wrap my head around. But just give you a little sense of what I've been doing in that time. I see some of my cohort in the audience and some of my dear friends from my time in the PhD program. And I've been told more than once that the Rutgers PhD grads are the best in the business. And so certainly, I love hearing that. So, right. So as I mentioned, just a couple things to talk about tonight: professional experiences, research overview, and just, some final thoughts, call to action. So I had remarks written about Ross, but I might not get through the talk. So just want to acknowledge Dr. Ross Todd, who is my dissertation advisor. And just with love and gratitude, what I will say is he knew I was going to be Dr. Cooke when I didn't believe I would ever be Dr. Cooke. All right, so just a little bit about me. I don't want to, repeat everything that you heard, but I do want to just kind of step you through my journey. We were also, before we got started, talking about pictures and memories and how we keep track of things. And I said that I do indeed have hard copy photos that I had to get developed at the drugstore of my bachelor's degree, but I graduated before digital cameras. So I don't have a digital copy of that, but it does exist. So as was mentioned, I got my MLS, the Master's of Library Service, which I do, that is near and dear to my heart as well, in 1997. And as Marie mentioned, I worked in New Jersey libraries my entire career, which I'm also very proud of. I worked at Montclair Public, also worked at Montclair State. I worked for a short time at the University of Medicine and Dentistry, which I believe is now part of Rutgers and has a different name. And then in 2008, what a blessing it was to go back to Rutgers and enter the PhD program as a Spectrum Doctoral Fellow. That was an amazing experience. Met amazing people that I'm still in contact with regularly. And it really was a transformative experience in a lot of ways. And then I went to the University of Illinois as an assistant professor, and that's where I earned tenure. And went through that process. And I will say that, so that was my first full-time teaching gig, right? As a librarian, I did lots of library instruction, but it's very different to have a semester-long class. And, when I got to Illinois, I was able to create and revise some courses in diversity, equity, and social justice. And was very fortunate to be able to innovate in the curriculum in that way. And through that process, you can see I call them my shining stars, and I make them all wear matching t-shirts when we go out and present together. But this was the first time that I had the experience of students saying, your class changed my life. Your class changed the way I think of things and how I look at the world. And there just really is no other feeling, to know that you make a difference and to know that you can have that kind of impact on people. And so I left Illinois to become the Augusta Baker Endowed Chair at the University of South Carolina, where I am now. I'm finishing up my 3rd year here. And I always say that this endowed chair position is the dream job that I never knew I wanted. So my chair, or excuse me, my position is named after Augusta Baker, who was a legendary Black librarian at New York Public in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And she was doing amazing work in children's services, children's literature, and storytelling. And so just to have a position that is named after a Black woman is really special. So very grateful to be in the position that I am now and be able to really, I feel like I was able to step up my game, if you will. And now being able to have a national and international platform with some of the work that I'm doing as chair has really been amazing. And just really quickly, the bottom right, these are some of my current students. On the left-hand side is Randy Heath. He is my Augusta Baker Scholar and also a Spectrum Scholar. And on the right-hand side, that is Sierra Harris, and she is my doctoral student. And just, as a quick funny note, I didn't realize that Ross was ill, and so I didn't know that he had been in the hospital. And so I Facebooked him and said, Ross, you'll never believe that I have a doc student who is me. And now I understand why you always looked at me the way you did. And he would say, oh, Nicole, Sierra is at the top of her game. I don't even think she has scratched the surface. But just, to say that it was a full circle moment to be able to have just a really wonderful doc student. It just made me appreciate Ross and the program that much more. So to tell you a little bit about my work. So I, for many years, have had two parallel tracks in my research, and I'll tell you about that. One of them is equity, diversity, inclusion, social justice. And so when I went to Illinois, I was going there to teach public services. So I was teaching reference, instruction, things of that nature. And Urbana-Champaign is about 2.5 hours south of Chicago. So it is. I always said that I was teaching in the cornfields because the campus is surrounded by agriculture, and so just to say that there were lots of students who had never seen a person of color in the front of the classroom, and they would tell me that. Right. And so for the most part, it wasn't an issue. It was just a point of fact, and they were very glad to have the opportunity to, learn from someone with different perspectives and ideas, etc. But there were 2 or 3 students who gave me a really hard time and would not accept the fact that I was the authority, I was the one giving grades, and they weren't necessarily nice about it. So I say that to say that that was a significant turning point for me in my teaching and my research. And I decided that if these students were not willing and able to deal with me in the classroom, they were not going to be able to deal with the diverse populations and communities that come into our libraries. And I felt that it would be essentially malpractice on my part and on the program's part to not address this if we could. So that is how I got into, the more serious line of inquiry in terms of equity, diversity, social justice. And a lot of my work is internally focused. And by that, I mean, I look at how we are diversifying the profession, how we are retaining diverse personnel and workforce, and how we can get our aspiring librarians to be as empathetic and to be as compassionate and knowledgeable as they can. So when they go out into the various library types, they are willing, able, and happy to work with folks, that don't look like them, right? I don't want them to have the same experience, or their patrons to have the same experience that I did. So that has been a very fruitful area of work. I will note, and I'll talk a little bit more about it later, that it's been really interesting to see how this work has changed in the last 10 years. I've had many articles rejected. I've had to pull articles, and I'll tell you later, the things that they said. But I am very glad now that we are able to have bigger and better conversations in the profession and in the community about equity, diversity, inclusion, and social justice. My other main area of focus is really human information behavior. Thank you, Ross. And I had been looking at it, information behavior, particularly in an online context. So that was my bread and butter, if you will. And then after the 2016 election, I actually got a phone call from a reporter who said, how are libraries going to deal with fake news, right? Because at that point it was relatively new and we were kind of at this crisis point. And I will be honest and say I didn't know what this reporter was saying because I had not yet made the connection between fake news and information behavior. She actually knew that I was doing information literacy. And so in her mind, they were very compatible, and it turned out that she was right. So I do credit her for kind of launching this next phase of my research. So in the last year or so, I've really been working to fuse those two areas. So certainly I do work in both areas. But now looking at racism, stereotypes, inequity, and all of those things as forms of information, and in particular forms of malinformation. So just very quickly, we have misinformation, we have disinformation, and we have malinformation. Misinformation is just false information. Disinformation is false information that is purposely created. And malinformation is also information that is purposely created and is designed to harm, right? And so this is kind of the area that I'm working at now, race and disinformation, race and malinformation. I'll actually be going to Harvard at the end of the month to participate in a race and disinformation conference. Very excited about that. So that's where I am now. And then finally, this is my love. This archival work that I stumbled into when I was at Illinois. These are some Black students that were in the library program in the early 1970s. And, it was just a brief mention in this picture was in a newsletter. And I couldn't get over this picture. And I said, who are these people? I need to know, who they are and what their stories are. And the gentleman that's seated in the far left, that is Sam Morrison. And he went on, I should say, to be the director of the Broward County Library System in Florida. And as luck would have it, I had an opportunity to present at his library last week and was able to meet him in person. So that was just amazing. But this has really set me off into a new trajectory that I just adore of unearthing these stories and finding out, just more context and about more of the richness that our field has. And speaking of which, this is a project I've been working on for about 2 years now. And at the end of this month, there will be a special double issue of the journal entitled Libraries, Culture, History, and Society, Library History Journal. This is the first time they've ever had a guest editor, which would be me. And I put out a call for these articles and I received upwards of 70 submissions. And because we had such a great response and we had so many great stories, they turned it into a double issue, which was also a first for them. And so, because we had such a great response, we'll be able to have an edited collection and we'll be able to do some more things to highlight Black librarianship. So very excited to be able to have this issue come to the public and come to the profession at the end of this month. So that's where I'm at now in terms of my current work. I'm working with some more archival stories and also still doing my information behavior, my diversity work, and seeing how they can come together as well. So last 10 years, career as a faculty member, there's been so much good stuff. I've been able to also write a book on cultural competence and information services to diverse populations. That is the first diversity textbook that was produced in the field and still being used by lots of graduate programs. So very grateful for that. Had an unfortunate experience with bullying and trolling that I'll tell you a little bit more about. And I'm sure that, Betty and Marie and Ross would not be surprised to hear that I, my type A personality, instead of, cowering in the face of a difficult experience, I turned it into 2 academic conferences. So very grateful as well for those opportunities. More good stuff. Wrote a book on fake news and alternative facts. The top left, that is Dr. Jeannie Austin. Jeannie Austin was my doctoral student at Illinois. So another full circle moment. And Jeannie just wrote Library Services in Incarceration, published by ALA. And Jeannie will be delivering the Augusta Baker lecture that I put on every year. So they will be delivering that lecture at the end of this month. And just this year, I'm a partner with the American Library Association to bring back the Spectrum Doctoral Fellowship. So we are literally, as I am speaking to you tonight, we're putting together press releases and going to start making announcements to have 7 new doctoral fellows begin their doctoral studies at 5 partner institutions in the fall of 2022. So love these full circle moments, and just really, love being able to give back to programs and to people and to experiences that really, have made me who I am today. So Ron mentioned, successes and challenges. It's been a hard road, y'all. And I by that I mean being a Black woman in LIS and in academia. So I mentioned just a moment ago being targeted in 2017, the summer of 2017. I was targeted by some alt-right hate groups. My picture and my contact information were plastered on these hate blogs, and I was doxxed, and it was a really painful and difficult experience, and that's where those 2 conferences ultimately emerged from. And I will tell you, it was another defining moment for me. I almost considered dropping all of my work in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And, it took some real soul searching to kind of get past that. So that was certainly an episode. On the left-hand side, these are some of who I call my sister scholars. And they have been a great support to me. They have been wonderful collaborators. Now, the reason I mention, or I have this particular picture up, if you'll notice our t-shirts, on the front, there's a hashtag that says information. And on the back, it says Black Lives Matter in LIS. So this particular picture was taken at the Elise conference in 2017. So that was probably in January, and then the trolling incident happened later that summer. But with those t-shirts, we got a lot of flack. In one of the sessions that we did, we were verbally attacked by a white faculty member who condemned us and said that we were being divisive and that we were, essentially making things up. And now I will say that post George Floyd, I put the shirt back up. It's just, on a regular t-shirt site that folks can purchase. We made $5,000 inside of a month because now, to say Black Lives Matter was the thing to do. When just a few short years before, I had been castigated, and we had been castigated by our own colleagues. All right, so just, giving you another sense of what, I guess, the ups and the downs, the toll of doing this work. So with that said, just to give you some final thoughts and a call to action. So several of the incidents that I described to you, these came from inside the field, right? And so this is, some did come from the public, but a lot of them came from inside the profession. And so this is actually an analogy that I use when I am talking about decolonization work, when I'm talking about critical self-reflection, when I talk to my students about how they should be prepared to have a critical information practice when they go into their various positions. On the left-hand side, we have a really pretty door, and this is what happens when organizations in the profession say, we ascribe to diversity, we just ascribe to equity, and everyone is equal, and all of those things, which is wonderful if that is indeed the case. But a lot of times what we see is what's on the right. And we see, a not so pretty place. We see a place that's not really equitable and it's not really inclusive. And so we have this level of frankly, hypocrisy that we have to deal with. And we have to deal with it not only in our communities and our institutions, but we have to deal with it in the profession, right? So I mentioned I have these 7 doctoral students coming through. They are folks of color. And the thing that is I think, going to be the most important thing is not only the community they form amongst themselves, but also having the knowledge that I didn't necessarily have, coming into a teaching position, and how difficult it can be to be a person of color in the profession. And this is not to say that at all that this is exclusive to LIS. I mean, this is just the world, that we live in. But in terms of a call to action, we have retention issues, right, with folks of color in the field. We have a pipeline issue at the Ph.D. level, hence my tireless work with Spectrum at the doctoral level and at the master's level. We have stereotypes that still persist, right? When I worked at Montclair State, not a day went by that someone didn't come in and say, "Do you work here? Can I talk to the real librarian?" Right? Because I still apparently don't look like a librarian in people's minds according to what they think. We have a racism problem, right? We have an inequity problem. And I just want to give a quick, very recent example. Emily Drabinsky just won president-elect for the American Library Association. And I want to preface this by saying I adore Emily. I've known Emily since I was a young librarian. So this is not about Emily at all. This is about the profession. When Emily announced that she was going to run for president of ALA, immediately Twitter lit up with folks saying, finally, someone that looks like us, that can represent us. Now, who is that? Those are white librarians, white female librarians, who apparently feel a way that for the last 4 or 5 ALA presidents, we've had people of color. So I actually had a conversation with Emily at her invitation. And I said, one thing I would, really encourage you to just keep in the back of your mind is that there's going to be a little bit of a diversity backlash. And folks think that, it doesn't apply to them. It doesn't impact them in any way. And you as a white woman, they think that, now they're going to be comfortable again, right? Because that's part of the what happens when we do this diversity work is that people become uncomfortable. That's part of how we grow and change and do better. But a lot of folks don't like that. So it'll be really interesting to see how her presidency goes. I certainly wish her well, and I know she can do some amazing work. But I just wanted to put that example out there. And so just finally, if we're going to promote equity and inclusion for our communities, we must advocate for that within the profession. So we have to make sure that our own house is in order before we go out into the communities. But with that said, it has been an amazing ride these 10 years as faculty, and ever grateful for the experiences, good and bad. I feel like they're all for the good of the order. And just, grateful, to be here with you this evening and receive this amazing award. Like I said, Rutgers is home to me, will always be home. And it's just amazing, to still have your family love you, after you've been gone for some time. So with that said, thank you so much for having me. It is an amazing honor, and just thank you so much.
All right, so I guess at this point, if anyone has questions that they'd like to ask, we could put them in the chat. I don't know if Marty's going to be managing that, if you're going to take that over there, Marty.
Mike, I have one. Dr. Cook, how did your time at Rutgers influence your life and also your career?
You know, I don't know that it's an exaggeration to say that, you know, Rutgers gave me my career, not only as a practicing librarian, but as a faculty member. Aside from, you know, just really a world-class education, just so many great experiences. One of the things, now that I'm done with the talk, maybe I can talk a little bit more about Ross. Ross introduced me to several key conferences and academic intellectual communities. My first trip overseas was with Ross to Spain. And so just to have that foundation, I knew so many senior faculty members before I got my first job. And it was just, you know, it was really a blessing. But just, you know, to have that pedigree, to have that just really a supportive community at home, right? I can call Marie, I could call Ross, you know, anytime I needed something. And, you know, and I see Nancy is on the line. I can, you know, do the same with Nancy. I've traveled to Russia with Nancy. You know, just to have that backup. And I always joke, you know, when Ross and Marie called, you know, it just really didn't matter what they wanted. I was going to do it. But just to, you know, have that backing and that support and really that rock solid foundation. So, you know, I see Dr. Knox is on the line, and, you know, we've done a lot of work together and spent a lot of time together. But to, you know, when we needed to know how to write, when we needed to know how to do research, we knew because we were prepared. So I don't know if that's, it's kind of a roundabout answer, but just to say, that's, you know, what comes to mind when you say, you know, how does Rutgers impact your career? It's just, it's really, it's huge.
What are some of the fun things you did at Rutgers
Which
that you
time?
could talk about?
Yeah, well, yeah. I will say, because I think this is my Stacy Peterson that's in the audience here. When I was a master's student, I was heavily involved with the Black Graduate Student Association. And that was really just, yeah, that's Stacy. That was a lifeline for me. I had an amazing time. And these were Black graduate students from around the university, and had a lot of fun with them. Shout out to my Ph.D. cohort. There were 18 of us. And just like I said, you know, I can call anyone at Rutgers. Most of that cohort, I can text them right now, and, you know, complain or ask for a favor, or, you know, we travel to meet each other. I see Dr. Beckett in the audience. Dr. Beckett was maybe a year or two ahead of me. Also another person I may not have gotten through the program if not for Dr. Beckett. So yeah, just, you know, we traveled together. Edith and I, Dr. Beckett, I should say, traveled to Croatia to meet Ross and Marie at the LEDA conference. So I, you know, this is my, when I say this is my family, I'm not exaggerating. So this is, lots of fun things, lots of travel, lots of good conversations. And really, you know, just, being able to exchange ideas, right? Like, so when we are doing this work, we are doing this work together, and we're doing it to change the field. So lots of fun stuff.
I just want to add that Ross and I had Nicole as the keynote at the LEDA conference on social justice issues. I'm really verklempt. I'm sorry. I'm still, well, Nicole, what you're saying is just so really amazingly touching to me, but just missing Ross,
Yes.
our dear colleague, and the one who brought a lot of fun to our lives, lots of fun to our lives.
Yeah. Marie, I was going to say in the beginning, I can say it now. He told people, it was interesting. It was also, it could be challenging to have an advisor who was this international world traveler, in addition to, amazing scholar who was always, at a conference. And, Ross would go to Paris on the weekend just because he wanted to go to his favorite cafe. Um, and I had Ross on a little bit of a schedule, right? Because if you didn't catch him, I didn't know when he would be in the country. It wasn't even that he wasn't in his office, he might not be in the country. So every time I had a meeting with him, I would not leave until he gave me another date. And he would open this big, date book and we would set up dates. And he, years later at a conference, he told someone, oh, yes, Nicole had me on a schedule. Nicole managed me. And I said, Ross, that's not nice. It's not fair. I didn't do that. And he was right. I did do it. But, I had to keep Ross close. So, yeah. And I'm just checking the chat here. Thank you. Someone is saying that, because of the information services to diverse populations, a lot of people have had that book in their library education, which I'm very grateful for, and saying that they had to view one of my lectures. So very grateful. I'm very, very grateful for this comment. It's like I said earlier, to know that your work has an impact is an amazing thing. Thank you.
May
There's a
I ask
question
a question
that-
without putting it in the chat?
Yep.
What would you say? You talked early about the fact that recruitment and retention are enormously important to make the field look more like the country.
Mm-hmm.
If you were talking about recruitment now, there seems to be a number of initiatives going forward in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think might be the best way to recruit, or a way to increase recruiting? But also, can you zero in more from your perspective on what we can do to retain?
Mm-hmm.
And I know you have already talked about the fact that people are being prepared more than they were previously.
Mm-hmm.
But besides that preparation, what would you do in the field? How would you, what would be the go-to things you would put on the agenda?
Yeah, so I actually don't think recruitment is the issue. To Betty's point, we have the Spectrum Initiative, we have the Mosaic Initiative coming out of the Association of Research Libraries. There are any numbers, and God bless IMLS for putting thousands of us through library school in one way or another. And the numbers for BIPOC or diverse faculty and students are not increasing, right? We seem to be just breaking even. And I think, there are any number of webinars and anecdotes of people of color who are leaving the field because they don't feel welcome, right? And I've written about this, and people feel like they're unwelcome guests. And it really comes down to organizational culture. And whether people want to change, and and it's back to that picture I showed of the good door or the pretty door versus the not so pretty space. And I don't necessarily know how we can change all of the organizational cultures, right? Because every place is different. But also to your point, I didn't have any of the classes that I now teach when I was in graduate school the first time. And so to that end, if I had my druthers, I would make everyone, they don't have to take the class with me, right? But take a, diversity class, a social justice class, and come back and get that professional development. Because we are, as you say, we are in emerging majority population. We're in a very pluralistic society, and it's not what a lot of people are used to. And I think we have to have more leadership training. We have to have more interdisciplinary work because that's what we are in libraries. We are a microcosm of society at large. So, I think we have to, broaden our net a little bit, and we have to start holding people accountable to make these changes. It can't just be a couple people doing this work.
So Nicole, this is Ron. I was just wondering if you could comment on your experiences at having been at the University of Illinois and at South Carolina.
Mhm.
Is there a different focus in the programs, and just your views on really having the opportunity to be in two major universities?
Yeah. Yeah, they're very different places, I have to say. So, Illinois is a very large faculty. It has a very large focus on information science. And this is, certainly not to disparage. It's just very different, right?
Yeah.
But I will say, and I can say this because I have said this to them directly. It was a very, very difficult place to be a Black woman. So I'll leave it at that. But it's not to say that I didn't have great experiences. I see some of my very dear friends from Illinois on the line. So certainly a good place. South Carolina, because it is in a metro area, it's much more diverse. It's much more what I'm used to, being from New Jersey. So that was a great relief as well. So I'm on a smaller faculty now. I'm on a much more diverse faculty. And we are very much library focused, which was a requirement for me if I was going to make that move. So certainly we do information science. I was able to initiate a course in diversity, just like I did at Illinois. I've been able to innovate in the curriculum here. I'm also teaching information behavior class in the fall. They didn't have that on their books as well. So lots of freedom. Lots of room to innovate, very library focused. Ross would be Ross would be grateful to hear that we have a very strong school library media program. And it's a different focus. So South Carolina is also an R1 in terms of research and teaching, but South Carolina also has a Carnegie designation for public service, so that very much influences the culture here as well. So, two great places, just very different, and grateful for both opportunities.
I just had one other question. uh, Malinformation,
Hmm.
is that a term that's now entered our vocabulary? I
No.
hadn't actually heard of it until you
Yeah.
talked.
Yeah, no, it's not. So misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation, they come together to form information disorder. And so now, with everything going on in the world, we're hearing disinformation much more in the vernacular. But we're not hearing malinformation. I think that will come, but no, it's not. It's not a common word at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. So are there any more questions on chat?
Yeah, there's one from James.
Okay.
Dr. Cook, so much of your work on fake news and inequity, diversity, and inclusion is essential to the work of everyday librarians. How do we bridge the gap between work like yours in academia and the day-to-day work of active duty librarians? Good question.
I love active duty librarians. I have to use yes, that has been my goal as a faculty member. And I will just tell you very quickly that when I was in Illinois, I used to get a little bit of flack from my deans because of where I published. And there's a couple reasons for that. Like I mentioned earlier in the talk, a lot of venues did not want my work. They said that my work was divisive. They said that my work was inflammatory, that it was made up, that it was not rigorous, right? You name it, they've said it. And I've had people say that about my entire body of work. Like I've lost jobs over that, and had to pull publications, etc. So that was one thing. So I wound up publishing in more practitioner oriented journals because they were more receptive. But also I would tell my deans, like, those are my people, right? I'm a librarian. I'm always going to be a librarian. And, that was part of the rationale, was to bridge that bridge between theory and practice, right? Because I've been out of, I haven't been an active duty librarian in over 10 years, right? So I don't know, the current database or some of those things, right? So I just had lunch with some of the public librarians in my town today, right? We have a very good relationship. We collaborate. One of the highlights of my career was coming back to NJLA to give a talk, give a keynote, and just, keeping those lines of communication open, because I feel like my work informs the field, but I also very much need folks that are on the front lines to tell me what they need, to tell me what they want, and tell me how they can work together. So that is very much my lens. To that end, I have, I'm counting in my head, I have three lecture series that I have at the University of South Carolina, where my guest speakers. I'm just waiting to, okay, yes. So I have 3 lecture series at South Carolina where my guest speakers are folks in the field that are actively working, and I think it's really important. Thank you, Joyce. I see you there, and I always appreciate you being there. And I think it's really important to have current voices come and talk to the students, right? Because they can read my book, they can hear me tell my stories from, when I was a librarian 10 plus years ago. But for them to be able to hear the good and the bad from current librarians, I think is really important. And so that's part of the way that I aspire to, bridge that gap and keep the field a little bit more holistic in my estimation.
Okay, just wondering if there are any more questions.
I see one more question from Maureen Smith. Hi, Maureen. Congratulations, Dr. Cook. Are you seeing malinformation being used as a weapon for book challenges?
Oh, yeah.
That's a great question. To Ron's point, I've not seen malinformation used, but certainly disinformation, absolutely, and misinformation being weaponized. And I think also, stereotypes as well, right? Like everything is CRT. Everything is racism, right? So I think a lot of things are being weaponized, and certainly disinformation and misinformation.
Okay, I think with that, I'd like to bring our session to a close. Thanks, Nicole, for a very informative session. Thank you for everyone that joined us. Yeah, we can give a thank you to Mike for setting up our Zoom framework. It all worked very smoothly. I have just a couple of extra comments here, if you don't mind. I wanted to say a little bit more about the Alumni Association. It is a voluntary association, and we are always looking for new recruits. So I would just like to offer the opportunity to anyone who is with us tonight. If you're interested in joining us, you can contact me. My email address is actually up front in the chat queue. It's rjanse@rutgers.edu. Or if you know anybody on our board, you can obviously just contact them. We will be doing this event next spring. And as I mentioned earlier, we rotate through the 3 departments. And so next spring, we will be honoring a candidate from the Journalism and Media Studies department. So you can put that on your calendar and perhaps join us next year as well. So any other comments from Nicole or anybody else?
I just want to say thank you again. Thank you all for coming out, and yeah, just thank you. Like Marie said, I'm a little verklempt as well. So thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you, everybody. That concludes our session tonight.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Good night. Good
Oh.
night.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Well, that went pretty well.
Went great. Sorry, I was losing it.
Oh, that's okay. Ron and Dr. Cook left already. I was hoping they would stick around for a minute, but
Yeah.
it was tough. We had a couple of noisy moments there.
Yeah, what
Also-
happened? Because my Zoom went down. I had to come back in.
Oh, I don't know. I muted some people that had some noise coming around, and I took care of that. But I had to find them.
Stop the
Unfortunately,
recording. Stop the recording.
that's okay. We can always edit that too.